Hello and welcome once again to another episode of The Bike Show. As usual, we're going to cram a load of stuff into this episode, including the next in a series of bike tips from Bike Tyre Warehouse. We'll also be taking a look at a load of very interesting new models. But first, the most exciting part of the show, which obviously involves Donovan, who is in the very lucky position of writing for just about every known publication on the African continent, as well as doing what you see him doing here on the Bike Show, and tied up with one of his publications, his Dirt and Trail magazine. Don, you hooked up with them and had a fantastic day out again with a load of adventure bikes. They may be middleweight bikes, but they're all still pumping up around 100 horsepower or so, and that's not exactly a small amount, is it, off-road, Don? And as you have said in some of your previous tests, adventure bikes, it's more about the mid-range than the power.
Yeah, every single time you look at any one of the press releases of these bikes, they talk about mid-range. In fact, the Triumph Tiger 900 produces one less horsepower than the old 800 did. But, you know, where the 800 was all about revs, the 900, you don't need revs. I mean, I don't think anybody ever takes it to the actual red line. I mean, what for? You just sit in that sort of mid-range point and you've got everything you need right there. And that is the point. That's where people ride these things.
Don, 5 bikes, 4 ultra-modern ones, and a little one out of left field that possibly we'll get to a bit later. Where would you like to start, alphabetically, or just what pops into your mind first?
I'm going to actually start with the Triumph. The new Tiger 900, okay, which is kind of interesting, okay, because we've always said that, in fact, we did a whole piece on this, that Triumph is one of the most loved brands in the world. The bikes they make is not necessarily someone's favorite. I mean, you got the BMW versus KTM clan when it comes to this, the adventure market, but whenever you mention the name Triumph, both the KTM and BMW people, while fighting at each other, will stop and go, oh yeah, Triumph, yeah, okay, yeah, Triumph, you know what I mean? It's got this sort of well-loved thing. And here's the thing, if they had brought the Tiger 800 to this thing, we would have loved it, because it's a brilliant motorcycle, and it's still a brilliant motorcycle. The Triumph 900 is just better than the 800, it just is. So this is a bike that, if its predecessor would have done well in this, so the 900 is just over the top. Wow, it does absolutely everything you can think of well. It's got all the mid-range you can think of, it's got all the electronic, it's got the looks, it's got the class, it's got the sophistication. 229,000 Rand, it's not too expensive, it's in the ballpark there. 201 kilograms dry, it's not too heavy. The only thing is I find it's a little bit tall for me. I mean, compared to some of the others, I find it a little bit tall, but apart from that, it's everything you want in an adventure motorcycle. It's right there.
Well, if I can move you on then from the Triumph to a bike that always in the past anyway was probably a similar type of focus, is BMW with its A50 GS. Now, I know it tends to get overlooked with the raft of new bikes. It has been updated, but something tells me still kind of shrinks into the shadows confronted with the competition like this.
Here's how it works. The 850 GS Adventure, it does nothing wrong. And in fact, personally, I think it's perhaps the best looking of this group, because it's the only one where the designers haven't gone, well, make it look like a rally bike. You know, it's sort of, you can see some effort has been put into it. But when I had to kind of write a bit of a summary for this, I kind of went, what was it like again? It's just nothing. Yeah, again, you leave after writing it, you kind of leave going, well, that was nice, but nothing stands out, nothing pops, nothing. But that's so typical German, isn't it? So typical BMW. It's kind of how they are. They build everything to work, to be comfortable, to be economical, and it's not the most exciting. It'll do the job forever, but yeah, I don't know. It kind of leaves you a little bit soulless.
Yeah, I mean, that's damning by sort of faint praise, isn't it? You've built an absolutely fantastic bike that does everything well, and in a way we kind of wished you'd given it square wheels or something so it has a bit of character and we would remember it. But there you go. If something could be too perfect, then, you know, maybe the 850 GS is it. It's simply too perfect and almost too forgettable. Well, let's move on to something that's bound not to be forgettable. It is almost the epoch, the era of the orange bike, especially the orange adventure bike. The big boys, the 1200 plus cc monsters that have dominated the scene for what seems like forever. Are they going to do the same thing in the middleweight category at 790? a parallel twin. Really? Is it that good? I kind of expect you to say yes it is, and I won't be surprised.
The one thing I like about that 790 is that it's really small. So you've got like the Triumph Tiger, the Tiger 900 especially, is rather a large motorcycle. So even though it's kind of light, kind of everything well made, there's a lot of motorcycle under you. You know what I mean? And that's sort of, especially in off-road, it's kind of a lot of pressure. Especially for me, I'm about 4 foot high, trust me. I look bigger on TV, I'm really not, and I've got the shortest legs known to humankind. When you're riding it, there's a lot of motorcycle and there's a lot of distance to the floor. And that does take its toll, you know what I mean? You kind of feel that you're kind of, any minute now it's going to freight train out of here and you're going to be out of control. The KTM, you never feel that way. Even the R model, it feels smaller than everything else. It feels lower to the ground, yet it does everything like everything else. Also, that motor, it's a very kind of revvy motor. It's smaller capacity than the BMW and the Triumph, yet it pushes the same figures. And you do that by revving it. And so at the bottom end, you kind of got this very kind of easygoing motor at the bottom of the revs. And then at the top end, it's all revvy and out of control on a motorcycle that's small. So you just kind of feel like you can get away with more on the KTM than you would on, for example, the Triumph or even the BMW.
Well, motorcycling, as we all know, is a confidence game. So much of it is going on up here. And even more than on the road, off-road, it very much is a game of mind over matter. And it helps, obviously. That's vastly important, is how you feel on the bike. So, as always, KTM have got that absolutely nailed, which brings us on to another one of the newbies, especially for South Africa. It took quite a while, it took longer than it to arrive than it did in the rest of the world. So, still pretty big new news in South Africa. Yamaha's T7. Now, we've all ridden and enjoyed the NTO7, which is sort of the road version of it. They've taken pretty much that engine and built an adventure bike around it. Don, there was a lot of wildly positive press about the bike before it got to South Africa. Did it live up to your expectations?
Well, okay, before I picked it up, obviously I said, well, hang on. So it costs similar price to all the others. In fact, actually, the others have all gone up in price now. The 700, the T7, we don't call it, it's actually a Tenere 700. The T7 was the concept, but who can be bothered saying Tenere 700? No, T7. It's 200,000 Rand compared to the others, which are sort of more in the 230 kind of ballpark. So it's gotten better now. But when I went to pick it up, I asked the guys at Yamaha, so they put no electronics on it and literally has nothing. It has ABS because it's illegal to not have ABS. And even that, there's one button that just says off, and that's it. And there's nothing else. No traction control, no rider modes, nothing. It is like an old XT from the old days. Very simple, very straightforward. And yeah, it's got no electronics on it, but you know, people always condemn the whole, it's just about electronics these days. This is the motorcycle for you. That NTO7 motor, it's a 689cc inline twin, 72 horsepower, 68 newton meters of torque. It's less than all the others. And yet somehow it still feels as though it does the job. You don't get off the T7 feeling underwhelmed compared to all the others. Yeah, it is slower. Yes, it'll lose a drag race. But the way that motor feels, the way it kind of works with you in that chassis, it's incredibly light. It's 205 kilograms weight, which is amazing, quite frankly. And I think a lot of that has to do with the electronics. They do weigh a bit. So they took all of that off. You can feel it weighs less. That suspension is fantastic. That KYB suspension, the way you sit on it, the way everything, the way the motor works, even the sound of the motor, it's got this lovely sound to it. Everything works really well. And despite this thing being down on CCs compared to the others and no electronics, I would say it's up there. I mean, if I were going through Africa, I would probably take one of these out of all of these because, you know, in the great unknown, I think I'd be better off on one of these.
Talking about confident about going anywhere, you had a kind of wild card in this test with you, a bike that costs half or less than all the other bikes it was up against on the ride, the SWM. Tell me more about this. I mean, is it not cruel and unusual punishment to take it with you? So
for people who don't know, SWM is an Italian brand of motorcycle. What basically happened is when BMW sold Husqvarna to KTM, this company SWM took over the 650 motors. They had a 650 single cc motor, and that was given, it was basically the bike inside the Terra. Do you remember the old Terra 650 and all those kind of things? Yeah, so they took that motor, built an adventure frame around it, and now they sell what's called the SWM Super Trail 650. It's 650cc, single cylinder, 57 horsepower. They don't tell you how much torque it has. No proper electronics to speak of, and a dash that looks like a Casio watch. And yet, despite all that, it is absolutely brilliant. I absolutely love this little thing. It's, as you say, it's a left-wing thing. You get on, it's the little donkey in the group of racehorses, and yet you have to love it. And that single-cylinder motor, I mean, yeah, okay, you're going to lose to a drag race against anything, but the way that single feels, the way, kind of picks you up, things don't necessarily have to be fast to be exciting. And this is just case in point. It's way slower than everything else, and yet it feels so exciting. Plus, a bit like the Tenere, you could go absolutely anywhere on it. Tons of suspension, tons of anything, much lighter than anything else. It is absolutely fantastic, and it costs just 97,000 rand. I mean, even if you kind of go, well, I'm not sure about the brand and all that, doesn't matter. 97 grand, it's worth it.
Adventure. Let's not forget, it's about adventure. So be a little adventurous, look a little left field. And SWM have got an absolute bargain there. If you want to get out and do a bit of bundu bashing and go and see parts of Africa that you would not think of doing on a massive 1.3 litre, R250,000, 300,000 rand adventure bike, then for a third of the price, you've got your tool right there. Don, I have to ask you, but you're riding home. Which one are you taking?
Okay, if I were going to Africa, the T7.
Here we go.
Yeah. If I were taller and went to gym more, I would take the Tiger 900. But I'm not, so I'll take the KTM 790.
There we go. And if you want more details and you live in South Africa, then when you've seen this on the TV, already on the shelves, somewhere in your local area will be Dirt and Trail magazine, and you can read what Donovan has said and many of the other guys on the ride and get a little bit more of the technical detail behind all of these bikes. That's all we've got time for now. We'll be back after this short break.